Thank you all for accommodating time and joining us. The session is organized by Crystal.ai, and now I invite Mr. Lim to take us through the session. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak to you about essentials of estate planning, protecting your legacy. In my presentation this afternoon, basically will cover two parts. The part one give you the overview, what is estate planning. And then part two is about the applicable estate planning tools. Particularly, I mean, these tools, I'm speaking from Singapore. So these are legal documents available in Singapore. In different countries, you may have different instruments available. Yeah, but the concept is the same. And then followed by the typical structure of integrated estate plan. Now, first of all, estate planning to me, that is my conviction, is embodies love and care. All of us have our family, we have the immediate family, or you have those people who are philanthropic, care for the society, care for the unfortunate, less fortunate person. Number two is a kind of responsibility and obligations. If you are parents, you have obligation to care for your children, provide for your children, or even for my generation, I care for and provide for my parents as long as they live. That's my obligation to provide for them. Stewardship and do good. Yeah. And then the last thing is the trend worldwide. There's more and more needs for estate planning. In Singapore, for example, the number of special needs children, autistic children, is on the increase. Every year there are about 400-500 primary one students are found to be autistic, and then they can live on for another 40-50 years every year accumulative. So the trend of social needs, the people with disability and then smaller family, aging population, yes, there's an increased need for estate planning. So it is a critical need for estate planning, and then the whole purpose of estate planning to me is how to reduce suffering to your family members. Number two is to avoid financial losses or unnecessary financial loss. And unfortunately, this kind of service is underserved, not enough. So my objective is through my talks, even my books, is to raise public awareness on estate planning. Now, death happens to everyone, will happen is a certainty, but what causes death? Can be natural death, can be unnatural death. I think in your own experience, you will realize that is something not within anybody's control. I call this one of the significant life event. Now, the other significant life event is called loss of mental capacity. Hopefully, it do not happen to any one of us, but maybe our relative, our friends, our colleagues, that some of them have suffered loss of mental capacity. Could be due to dementia, accidents, and strokes, or even very stressful mental stress that cause mental illness. Yeah, so that can happen. And then in life, for every one of us, we have three states. One is healthy. The other two is what if we lose mental capacity, or what we pass away. It can be a single person or single parent. So after at the end part, when towards integrated estate plans, it could be for single with or without dependents. What if you have a family, you're a couple, then yourself and your spouse, also the three states. Together, the worst thing is both of you suffer loss of mental capacity. Both are alive, but no legal capacity. Now, how would you want your asset to be managed to provide for those people that you care for, that you have obligation beside yourself? So I think these are the essence of estate planning that we need to. Now, COVID, over the last 3 years, we know that everybody realized actually we need to make preparation. We need to be prepared all the time. Now, take a very simple example. How do you plan for your holidays? You need to decide the time. You need to decide where to go. You need to decide the budget, things like that, and who are the people can go. So you need to make the preparation. If you are a businessman, of course, you need to make a plan, every year or review 6 monthly, things like that. Now, for what? What if, in case death and loss of mental capacity happen? So you do not want to be caught by surprise when this thing happens. So you want to make plan, right? So estate planning is basically the activity to address what and when I lose mental capacity or death, so that we not be caught surprise. All right. Overview of estate planning. So what is estate planning? I will cover basically what is the definition of estate planning and what is the purpose. The nature of estate planning, subject matter. What are we talking about? When we talk about estate planning, what are the subject matter that we are concerned with? Why is it important? And then why is it urgent that everyone should need to do the estate planning? And then the process involved. Estate planning is part of financial planning. For those people who, I think most of us, you would have your insurance planning, retirement planning, investment planning, and some really need to look at the tax planning to minimize tax expenses. But estate planning as part of financial planning is number 6, and is less people are providing this area of service. What is estate? When I tell people about I'm in estate planning services, is very often I was asked, Mr. Lim, are you selling properties? Are you dealing with the renting of houses or shops? I said, no. Estate planning is not just the real property. So estate is, in a nutshell, estate is every asset, whether movable or immovable, that hold under your name, or you are legally entitled to claim or to own or to receive, right? So there are different types, anything under the law that you have name to it, that is your estate. Estate planning is whole life, because afterward we'll go a little bit more detail. It's a whole life. It's not one time you do your will, for example. Doesn't mean you do the will today. After 20 years, 30 years, you become married, got children, grandchildren, and your wealth become increased. It's not. It's every significant event when the time change, situation change, you make changes. It's throughout your lifetime. To manage your assets, to manage your estate, all that you have, whether it's to distribute or to hold in some instruments, so that your wish be done. So in a nutshell, estate planning is a living activity to ensure your wishes be done. And then, of course, also is the value system. Legacy, not just a material thing. Legacy include your value system, like forgiveness, unity, care, or sportsmanship, or education, or healthcare. What are the things that you want to, or even arts and music that you have a heart for, that is close to your heart. So it's a living activity. So what is the purpose of estate planning? Is to ensure your wishes be done, as mentioned earlier, and to reduce suffering to your family member. Because without estate planning, when one of the significant life events happen, you have to follow whatever laws in your country, that is within your jurisdiction, the jurisdictions you are under. And then invariably it takes longer time and it costs much more. And meanwhile, your assets are frozen. So your family members suffer, and then the unnecessary financial loss. And then of course is to protect your legacy, the value system and asset, not just the asset, but also the value, that system that you have. So what is a nature estate planning? I use an acronym, DICU. Basically 4 areas. Number 1 is the dynamic nature of the estate assets that you have, also their value. For example, property in Singapore, 5 years ago, maybe a apartment is maybe $1 million. Today is 1.5, 1.8. Shares and stocks change over time, right? So it's a dynamic nature of the assets plus the value changes over time. That's so it's dynamic. Number 2, changing social situation and concern and priorities. All of us, I cannot see you, but I believe you are adults. Now, when you first graduated from college, you started work, most likely all of us are single. And then after 5 years, 10 years, you're married, and then you have children, your social circle increases, and then you start to go into business, and then you become a business owner or you're investor, your wealth changes, and then become philanthropic. You see the society that you're in, they are not needy person, the underprivileged person, that you have a heart to care for them. Yeah, so your social situation changes, also your concern and priority changes. Now, every one of us, you have different dynamic, you have different asset holding. Every one of them have your different family size. Some are single, some married with no children, some with many children, some who have parents and in-laws above them. Yeah, so all of us change. As such, estate planning is unique for every person. And then number 4, which is logical, because over time, your asset holding, your social situation changes. So you need to review from time to time when significant events. My mother passed away in the year of COVID 2020. So now I have one less person to care for. And then soon, if my youngest daughter is getting married, then I have less responsibility, because to me, I have 3 daughters. Once they're married, to me is the husband's responsibility. So I have less obligation so I need to make plans to change my plan, review from time. So this is nature of asset planning, DICU. Then what are the subject matter on asset? When we talk about asset planning, I call it W5H or ABC. W5H is basically who, what, where, when, why, and how, right? And then here, who is not just your beneficiary, but your legal representative and what? Organization, can be church, can be temple, can be client association, that you have an obligation or you have a heart for, to care for, to provide for, that you are concerned, right? So this is benefit not just a person, it could be an entity, organization, charity organization, for example. So who are of your concern? Then what and where, basically your assets. Asset is what do you have? Basically, asset can break in. Let me see can you see my hand? Basic asset in 5 categories, and according to the challenges, different these 5 categories. First thing is business. Business could be your solely owned or can be with partners. They can be in your local country, can be in regional countries. So it's every country has laws governing business entities. Same real property. Real property can be residential and property, can be commercial property, factories, warehouse, can be in Singapore, can be in different countries. Again, every country got law governing the real properties. And then, personal variable, antique cars, vintage car or family antique or some other Picasso drawing, things like that. Those are very valuable, and yet you cannot divide, cannot put up, divide into a few portions to give different people. So these are some challenges. How do you handle insurance policies that nowadays is not $10, $100. Insurance, we're talking about those a few $100,000 or even few $1 million. Universal life policy is few $1 million per policy. So the payout is significant. So how do you want to manage your insurance policies? Liquid asset is the rest, can be cash, can be fixed deposit, can be investment account, shares and stock. All these are liquid assets, can be easily divided. Now, when, why, and how, basically you need to have a concept of how you're going to manage the asset that you have to provide for the people or the entities of your concern. So these are the concepts. As such, when the W5H on the other hand is, I would say, asset planning is as simple as A, B, C. B is put in bigger capital in the letter, because estate planning is not focused on asset. Estate planning is focused on the people, on the entity that are of your concern, or the good causes of your concern. Then you look at what asset I have. How can my asset be utilized to provide for your beneficiary that you have concern? This is called a concept. So that is basically a nutshell, the ABC of asset planning. So this is also the first step. Yeah, is to do your ABC. So just a quick summary. Estate planning is a lifetime activity, and then you from single to married to become with children, from start your work, start earning, start saving, and become change over time. Your social situation as a whole changes, and also concerns change. So it's a lifetime activity. Why is it important and urgent? Important because the significant life events is not within our control and can happen to anyone, anytime, not within our control. When that happens, I want to make sure that I have a plan in place so that whatever my wishes can be realized. And with estate planning in place, your estate planning document in place, it can be expeditiously carried out. So without delay, and then for some others, for probate, certain things, country, different laws, a person pass away, your estate need to go through a probate process before they can be distributed. And then also is, depending on your family situation, you don't want your immediate family member to quarrel over your asset when person not around. Yeah, and prevents conflict or dispute, not just within a family member, also probably with your business partners. And then minimize tax and duties, because that is also one of the purpose of estate planning, and avoid unnecessary expenses and financial losses. Then, of course, for those people who are in a profession that is have risk of being sued or risk of going bankrupt because of your professional obligations. Yeah, so you also can use estate planning to protect your assets. Today, you have few $1 million assets, cash, wealth around. But what if you have some professional negligence, and then people sue you, you may go bankrupt. So maybe you want to put away, $1 to $2 million for special purpose trust for asset protection. And then what if you're a businessman, business partner with 2 or 3 partners, when any of the partner can pass away, any of this partner can also suffer loss of mental capacity. When that happens, the family member of the business partner may want to cash out the value. How would the company handle this thing? Business continuity, things like this. So how to ensure that your if you are the one who passed away or lost mental capacity, you want to make sure the value that's due to you, to your estate, will be provided to your family. So if you can achieve this, then you can enjoy peace of mind. Now, it's urgent because I think it's based on earlier mentioned, basically the significant life events of death and loss of mental capacity is not within anyone's control, right? So it is urgent because once you pass away or once you lose mental capacity, basically you got no legal capacity. Right? Once you do not have the legal capacity, you can't change your will, you can't change your trust, you can't change your whatever other legal documents, yeah. Or let's say your house rented out, you pass away, who can represent you as an owner of this house to rent out your house? So this, because you got no legal capacity to do. What happened if one of these two significant life events were to strike you, your spouse, or worse still, both of you? Estate planning must take into consideration all these possibilities so that we will not be caught in surprise. So a little summary: unplanned death and loss of mental capacity can happen to any one of us. When that happens, we lose legal capacity. And then once you lose mental capacity and without having the asset planning document in place, you no longer have choice, but have to go by the prevailing laws in the country concerned. And that may bring about adverse impact to your families, to your business partners as well. So it is necessary and prudent to consider all situations, the metrics earlier I mentioned. So estate planning is for every adult, and because loss of mental capacity and death is not within anyone's control, also bearing in mind the significant life events of death and loss of mental capacity is not conditional on age, can happen to anyone, whether you are single or married, and whether you are rich or poor. So it's important, applicable for every adult. So estate planning is for everyone, and as such, after hearing this, please make time and take action. Now, lastly, before this part one, is estate planning process is not a one-time, not transaction, not buying a cup of coffee. You're given $1, you get a cup of coffee. It's not a transaction. It is a process. Awareness. Attending seminar like this, or you read from books, this for you to gain some awareness. What is estate planning? And you need to do a lot of preparation, because just now we talked about estate planning as easy as ABC, right? You need to know who are of your concern, what asset you have, and then have some idea how your asset can fulfill your wishes to provide for your beneficiary. So you need to do preparation. After preparation, how do you structure it? Later part of the talk, we'll talk about integrated estate plan for different person, whether single, whether married, whether businessman. So what kind of instrument you require? Then you're going to draft a document. You want to go through a process from draft, after validate the content are all correct, then finalize documents, sign and execute the document. And after that, where do you keep the document? Your will, your trust, and other, these lasting power attorney or other document. Where do you keep it? And then after 5 years, 10 years, when your situation change, when your concern change, you need to review and then go back again whether your structure need to change. So this is a life cycle. This is estate of estate planning. Okay, so that we finish part one. Maybe I just quick allow maybe some question, or Nikki, is there anyone to ask any question up to this stage?
Hi, Mr. Lim. We have two questions from the audience. The first one being, what is the difference between estate planning and making a will? And
A will is part of the document in estate planning. In the second part, after we'll talk about in Singapore's context, there are different type of estate planning documents. So will is just one of the instrument that can be used. Some people may only need will, but after you understand there's more than that, not just will. Will is just part of the estate plan document.
got it. Thank you. There's another question from Mr. Krishnan in terms of if it is possible to share a good example of a estate plan.
Yes, later part, in the last part, I will talk the integrated asset plan with the different instruments, depend on the situation of the person. These are typical, but as I earlier mentioned, asset plan is unique to every individual. What at the end of the last part of my presentation is just some typical situation. So we'll go to that later.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We can move on.
Okay, so now just let's go into the part two. There are different type of instruments. In Singapore context, in different countries, there are different law governing this thing. Will, I think, is every country, whether it's on India, whether in the Middle East, in China and Indonesia. Yeah, will is something is very common when we die, right? But before we die, what if we lose mental capacity? In Singapore, we got this document called law called Mental Capacity Act. Within this Mental Capacity Act, allow every adult to make lasting power of attorney. We call it LPA. LPA. You know what is a power of attorney? Because a person lost mental capacity, he or she is still alive, not dead yet. So the will hasn't come in. Will only applicable when a person passed away, right? Last week now is applicable when a person lost mental capacity but still alive. Now in Singapore, we have got this CPF system, the CPF money. Every person work, every employee, they will have a CPF account that is controlled by government. In US, they got this pension fund, for example. So different countries have a slightly different thing. Now CPF money in Singapore, I'm not too sure among the audience, are there anyone who are working in Singapore or Singaporean or Singapore PR? Now, if you are Singaporean, you are Singapore PR, you have a CPF account. And then CPF account, it cannot be willed. Money in a CPF account cannot be willed away. It has to follow the CPF Act, the law governing CPF money. And the only way you can distribute is by nominating your beneficiaries. So you need to do your CPF nomination. Advanced Medical Directive is a separate law governing this life support system. If I am under the life support system, who decide to pull? So Advanced Medical Directive basically allow me, an adult, to make a decision if I under that condition, I do not want to undergo this life support system. Yeah. After I go a little bit more detail about this. Now, this 4 item is in Singapore is everyone need. Basically, you look at these 4. I'm not too sure which country are you with. Basically, in every country, you need to address what if you pass away. What if you lose mental capacity? You don't have the legal capacity. Then what document do you have? Some other country they call enduring legal power of attorney, or lasting, or this called general power of attorney, GPA or EPA. Different country, but basically to address when a person, or they call living will. different country called living will. Basically, to address what if a person is still alive, but no legal capacity. So you want to appoint some power attorney to act for you under the conditions. Yeah. Okay, then number 5 is trust. There are different type of trust: charity trust, family trust, asset protection trust, business protection trust. There's a purpose that is you have someone to hold asset on trust for some purpose. So there are different type of trust. And special needs trust in Singapore. Just earlier in the beginning of my talk, I said there are more and more special people or person with disability or special need person. If you are the caregiver for this kind of dependence, what happens if you pass away? What happens if you lose mental capacity or getting too old or frail? You cannot afford continue to look after this special need person. Then how can this special need person maybe going to live for another 10, 20, 30 years? Where is this person going to stay? What kind of daily needs? How to provide for? Because this person cannot open a bank account. He cannot own a property, for example. So you need a special need trust for people to care for the special need dependent as long as they are alive. Then of course insurance. Insurance you can nominate to different beneficiary, different type of nomination, things like that. Okay, so these are the 7 tools available in Singapore. I will go a little bit more detail into it. The LPA basically is allow me as a donor, when I lack mental capacity, I want to appoint my donee, to appoint donee who can make decision and act for me, to access my bank account, access my assets, to provide for my best interest, right? Then if you do not have an LPA is when I can do set up now, but if I do not have, and when I lose mental capacity, the law says that someone have to, if willing, to come forward to apply to court as deputy. That process in Singapore today, it will take about 6 months and it costs about $8,000 to $10,000. Whereas doing LPA is maybe $50, $100. And when I lose mental capacity with a medical report straight away, my donee can act for me. If you do not have, when I lose mental capacity, you will take 6 months or so plus $8,000 to $10,000 to have the deputy appointed by court. Meanwhile, 6 months can be, your family members suffer, your asset nobody can access. So it's very difficult. Yeah, so that is LPA. Will, of course, the will is you are the will. The person who make the will is called testator. Testator is the will is only effective when the testator pass away, and then you need to go through a probate process. This is same in every country. In China, in India, the same. The probate process, so that for the court to say yes, this appointed executor is rightful person that can carry out to administer your assets and to carry out your will. But if you no will, every country also have a law. If no will, then when a person pass away, who is the legal person represent have the legal right to manage the estate asset of this person? You have to apply as administrator. That's under Singapore's law that we call administrator. If you don't, and so first of all, the problem of someone come forward to apply as administrator, that is legal cost, time cost. And then if you don't have a will, then how to distribute your assets? It go by law called Intestate Succession Act rule. For Muslims, for some country, you got the forced heirship. In China, also have a different. If you don't have a will, then you go by the government law as to how to distribute your assets. That may not be what you want, right? CPF nomination, just now I mentioned, CPF is cannot be willed away. It has to follow the CPF law in Singapore that who do you want to receive your money if you are not around, your CPF money, yeah? So if you've done your CPF nomination, then when you pass away, the money remain in your CPF account will be distributed to the beneficiary named in your CPF nomination. If you do not have nomination, then what happens? When you pass away, your money will go to public trustee. That's a government organization. They will hold the money for you, and then for the people to come forward to claim the money. If they are followed by ISA rule, that means the law that governing the distribution of asset for people without a will. That's for non-Muslim. For Muslim, in Singapore, they have to follow the Sharia law in Singapore called Fariat rules for Muslims. So imagine a Fariat rule, so you have to follow that way. If your CPF money will follow the Fariat rule, inheritance certificates, the process, the proportion is something no longer your wish. Advanced Medical Directive. Okay, just I briefly mentioned Advanced Medical Directive basically is life support system. I make my AMD already, but it's a personal decision because I made it because when I am undergo life support system, who decide to pull? All right. Even I have made the AMD, I have to subject to these 4 conditions. Number 1 is I am terminally ill and no cure. That's the first thing. Number 2, I must be unconscious. Because if I'm conscious, the doctor must ask my decision. Do I want to go to what A or what B? Do I want to receive this injection or certain operation? They have asked me. So unconscious. Number 3, my condition is no cure and then unconscious, and only this life support system that keep me alive. So these are the first 3 conditions under the Advanced Medical Directive Act, the law in Singapore. Not only that, beside these 3 conditions, the doctor who is attending to me, we call this attending physicians. They have to seek this Ministry of Health. There's a direction. They will have to appoint a panel of 3 specialists to say that yes, Lim Joo Sik is suffer terminal illness, no cure. Number 2, yes, Lim Joo Sik is unconscious. Number 3, he only kept alive by this life support system. So they have to verify that this is the situation. With that, then the doctor attending to me, my attending physician, will check with this registry in the MOH whether I have advanced medical directive. If I have, that means they just respect my decision, don't need to ask my family members. Now, if I don't have AMD, then what happens? If I don't have AMD under this condition, my wife, I got 3 daughters, my wife got 3 daughters, the doctor said, 4 of you go and do a family conference to decide when to pull. It's a very traumatic decision for your dear family member. And not only that, if I'm under life support system, I'm basically in the intensive care unit, and that is costly. Plus the specialists every day have to come and check on me. Plus all the expendable, plus the machine that is keeping me alive. So in Singapore, a government hospital in Singapore, a person under life support system, typically 1 day is about 2,500. For the private hospital, that could be 5,000, 8,000, depending on which private hospital, Mount E or Novena Hospital, those are very expensive. Yeah, so it's costly hospital bill. And then not only that, the patient who is on the life support system doesn't mean he's unconscious, but he still feel pains, he feel discomfort. Actually, in his mind, although he cannot express, actually he could be saying that, please let me go, but he cannot express. So actually he's suffering. So that is if you do not have AMD, these are the adverse impact, to you, to your family, to your assets. Okay, trust is basically legal document between you, called settlor, and the trustee. Trustee can be licensed trustee company, can be your close friends who are willing to be your trustee, to hold, to say, to carry out your instruction, to your wishes for the asset that is transferred to the trust for some purpose. Every trust has got some purpose. Yeah. So a person can set up various types of trusts. So today in our talk, we are not going to the different trusts because that is too detailed. So we do not have time to do that. But basically, give you an idea what is trust. Now, typically, trust basically is a legal document. You have a name. It's just that the company got a name. Who is the settlor is yourself, and who is the trustee that you appoint. Whether it's a trust company or a trustee company, or is it individuals, it can be your relative, sibling. And then what are the term conditions, what is the purpose, intention, and what are the assets. Settlement is the asset you put in the trust, transfer in the trust. Or how long is this trust period? Is it for this next 30 years, or for a time, for some kind of events until my children married, or when they are 35 years old, or when my parents are not around. So there is a start time, end time. And then under the trust law, you can appoint protector to make sure that the trustee carry out the duty correctly, and also serve as a liaison between beneficiary and the trust. Right? Then of course you have beneficiary. Typically, a trust also have a letter of wishes that is an appendix to your trust deed document. So this is typical structure of trust. Now, special need trust is a very special trust. It's not normal trust company can set up. It's in Singapore. It's handled by a company called Special Need Trust Company. It's a quasi government organization because they're especially tasked to provide trust duty for special need clients. Yeah. Now, whole purpose of special need trust is that with this special need trust set up to ensure that any person with special need will be cared for throughout his or her lifetime, right? Especially when the caregiver are no longer around or lost mental capacity, no legal capacity to look after them. So that is the purpose of a special need trust. Now, this is a typical structure of special need trust. The trustee is a special need trust company, which is government appointed. And then the trust fund is managed by public trustee. Again, it's a government organization. Now, important thing of the special need trust is special need trust basically is a special company. They have a network of contact with professional specialists. It can be a lawyer, can be physiotherapy, can be psychiatrists, can be speech therapists, people like this. So these are professional because especially people need the different type of healthcare professionals plus legal support and things like that. So they can help to provide the service needed for this special need person. Yeah, and then you are the one, if you are the caregiver or the parent of the special need person, you are the one to set up this special need trust with a special need trust company. And then it's just like any trust. Special need trust is just like the trust earlier mentioned, but the trustee can only be the special need trust company. Okay, I think there's something. Insurance, and I think earlier mentioned, most of us would have insurance policies. Insurance policy, when I die, what happened to the insurance payout? If I don't have a nomination, it go into my estate, the estate of the policy owner, not my estate. If I might transfer to somebody else, assigned to somebody else. so that the owner is somebody else. But if I do not assign to somebody else, the insurance policy, I'm the policy owner and I'm also the insured. When I die, the payout go to my estate. But if I have insurance nomination, basically when I die, then the payout go to distribute to my nominated beneficiary accordingly. Okay, so this briefly talk about 7 types of estate planning instrument in Singapore. In different countries, you may have different names for different these instruments, but basically is you need to you have to look at the laws in the country concerned, but the concept is the same. Yeah. Now here we quickly go into the typical structure of this estate plan. I just basically look at the estate plan for singles. Then in a single can be single with dependent, single with no dependents. Same with couples, couple with dependent or no dependents. And then for caregivers with special needs. And then what about for businessmen? And then at the end of it, we have to close this session, open for Q&A. Now, estate plan for singles with no dependent. Since you are single, you don't have the parents to worry about, you don't have siblings to worry about, you don't have children to worry about, but you still need to have this simple basic instrument. Earlier I mentioned the 4 things: will, LPA, CPF nomination, and AMD. Right? So you must have a will, because somehow you don't want to, I'm not against my government, but you want to make sure that if you pass away, whatever asset you have, you want to have a decision now, say who do you want to benefit. So you put a will, benefit your beneficiary. Your CPF money in Singapore also, you do your nomination, give to whoever you want to give. All these are independent. And then when you lose mental capacity, you want to appoint somebody to take care of you, take care of your bank account, take care of your investment, take care of your house, for example. So you need to have LPA. AMD, because if I'm on my support system, I make the decision. I don't want to burden family member, although you know dependent, but maybe you got siblings, the doctor have asked somebody, because you got no mental capacity, you're unconscious, you can't decide, right? So who to pull? So somebody have to make a decision. Do you need trust? Do you need insurance nomination? Yes or no? Depends on what your situation. If you are saying I'm a single, I got no dependent, but I want to do charity to champion, these soccer talents in Singapore. So you want to put, if I die, I want to set a trust that this money is to support the soccer, training of young soccer player. Now then you trust, but otherwise, if you don't have this kind of long-term goals that for your asset to apply, then you don't need trust. But otherwise, you may consider that. So that is for individual. But individual with dependent, either dependent could be your parents, could be your sibling, could be your own children. You are single, but you still may have parents and your own children, right? There are many singles in Singapore, could be due to divorce, or could be due to widowing, pass away of the spouse. So you are single. So single, you still need, if you have dependents, that means you have obligation over a long time, young children or the aged parents that you need to provide for. This is called beneficiary. The solution is you need to set up a standby trust, so that in case you die or lose mental capacity, the instruction can be carried out to provide for your beneficiary. A trust, basically your trustee, yourself is set along and you're a protector. Then the will is governing the legal document required for executor to transfer the asset into the trust. LPA Form 2 is you lost mental capacity, but not just provide for yourself, also provide for the people that you have obligation or responsibility to provide, right? And AMD and CPF nomination. So this is a typical structure for singles with dependents or with beneficiaries. Quickly for couples, and This is a real situation in Singapore. Couples, Singapore society that now people married late. People married late don't want to have children because their work is so stressful, or for some reason they don't want to have children or cannot have a children. Some reason. So they got no dependent. Their parents are not around. And then no sibling or professional. So they got no concern for one sibling, no children. So what happened? Individual. So it's just an individual. The husband have his own will, have a beneficiary CPF nomination. Same, the wife have a CPF nomination, own will for, because they may have different beneficiary, not dependents. It's just they want to do charity or go to any entities of their choice beneficiary. LPA Form 1 or Form 2. So basically, it's very two individuals because both are professional. When husband not around, the wife is capable to look after herself. When the wife not around, the husband financially and so forth is able to look after himself or herself. So they're all independent. Now, what happens if they got dependent, got young children, got aged parents, even for some sibling require their help? Now, then you have this situation. Individual, you can have a joint standby trust, and then the individual will is individual documents. Trust, it can be jointly set up by the husband and wife called joint settlor. Joint settlor set up joint standby trust, and their will is as an instrument, as a pour-in of their assets into the trust when the person passed away. So the husband got will, wife have a will, and then the husband got CPF money, wife also got CPF money, all can go into the joint standby. So they only one blueprint, rather than the CPF nomination, different person, and over time you want to make changes. Will over time you want to make changes. No need. All your concept is in all your plans, all inside captured in the joint standby trust. So your situation change, you just change. The will is become evergreen. So this structure become, can last a long time. Your situation change, you just need to change the letter of wishes in the joint standby trust. Here I don't talk about the AMD because you know what it is already. Insurance nomination, yes or no. If you don't have nomination, basically all go into your estate through the will, go into your trust. So this is typically for family with this couple with dependents. The next two is basically one more is special needs. Because if I have a special need dependent, can be my mother who is dementia, can be I got a retarded child, maybe, I set up a special need child, but I may have other children, I may other beneficiary I need to care for, right? So you, if you have only single person, special need person only, then you just set a special need trust, and then the will go into that, because then you have one special needs person. But what if you have more than this special need person? You have other beneficiaries, right? Down here, you have other beneficiary, could be your parents, could be your other younger children, normal younger children. You have this special need trust that is provide for the special need dependents, right? And then the funding part can go into the standby trust. For your CPF money, they got different type of nomination. You can go into the special needs savings scheme, go into a special need trust, or can normal go to your standby trust. Your will is pouring in your asset in the standby trust. So your standby trust can be the entity that is fund the special need trust, and then your own trustee and your other beneficiary. All right, this is for family with dependents or beneficiary other than the special need person. Now, last two is for this businessman. Businessmen, depend on what you need, but one of the simple structure is basically you use a private trust company. Basically, is a company set up to function as a trustee, to hold your own trust. not providing trust service for other clients. Basically, having set up this trust company to provide trust service for your own trust, and then you can, if your company, investment, property, financial assets under this trust, and then your will and LPA, when you lose management capacity, when you pass away, that pour the asset into the trust, but is managed by this. The trustee is your own private trust company, and then under the Singapore law, the private trust company, the law governing this is that this has to appoint a licensed trustee. You must appoint a licensed trustee company as secretary of this private trust company, is to ensure compliance with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. Now most countries will have this concern, anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. So this, under this act, you can set up a PTC, private trust company, or called PTC. Now, PTC is managed by who? Managed by a board of directors. Can be yourself, can be your family, council, can be, you have your constitution inside here to give the instruction or the guideline, governance, how this private trust company should act to manage the trust and then manage all the assets, right? So that's for businessmen, yeah. And then the other way is just a simple, if you're not too complex, just use a standby trust, and then yourself, all the company, when you're alive, your company, you know how to manage your financial asset, your investment property, you know how to handle it when you are alive. But once you suffer loss of mental capacity or pass away, you can activate this thing, transfer the business or your company or your investment asset into the trust, and then the simple trust carry out your instructions for your beneficiaries. Okay, just quickly, the last slide. Basically, the conclusion: estate planning is important and urgent for every adult, and it's unique, and it needs to be customized for everyone. And you need to review and update from time to time as your situation change. You make changes. Now, basically, in the Singapore context, every adult need to have LPA, need to have will, need to have CPF nomination and AMD. Now, additionally, in instrument, whether trust, different type of trust for asset protection or family or business trust, depends on your needs. So that is the techniques of going to it is not the subject for our discussion today. You need to approach the specialists in the providing asset planning service to consult and how to structure your trust, your asset plan. Now, with asset plan in place, I have done mine. I know how my asset will be managed. I know who will be managing my asset when I lost mental capacity, when I pass away. So I have no concern of when this thing happened to me. I know all will be well taken care. I have a peace of mind. So that is the purpose and the benefit of having a asset plan done in place. And that can only be done when I am healthy with sound mental capacity. All right, I hope that is a little bit rushed because of time constraint. So I now leave this to Niti and see whether, because again do not see what the chat box on this, make it allow time for questioning.
So, Mr. Lim, we have a few questions from the audience. I'll just pick a few ones and we can probably answer this. So one of the questions was, if you are a citizen in country A but reside in country B, which legal system would apply to you, citizenship or residence?
Residency and citizenship, all these are some consideration, but not one consideration. For example, you have a company in Singapore, you have few real property in Singapore. All these are governed by Singapore law. Or Singaporean have property and business in Vietnam or in Australia, you're subject to the law of concern. Now, Now, then also the other one is the tax residency. Now, if you are US person worldwide, you are subject to US tax law. So there are estate planning, there are many, depend on your tax residency, and of course the other one, the term is called domicile. Depend on what domicile, you're subject to that country or not. So it's not just a residency or tax. So important thing is, where are your assets? Then you need to consider the law of the country, of the jurisdiction, not just country. For example, in US, if you are in California or in different state, then there are different state or different law. So it's called different jurisdiction. Even within the country, different state is a different jurisdiction. They have a federal law, they have the state laws. So that's more complicated. Singapore is a small country, so Singapore is all the law is the same. Singapore is jurisdiction. Singapore law is all governing asset planning. So here you got asset in Singapore, you need to consider that your instrument is set up in Singapore. Now, for trust, a trust can hold asset worldwide in London or this thing, but the tax method is you have to consider the tax law of the asset and the business entity you have in different countries. But it can be managed from a trust in Singapore. And a will is usually, if earlier I mentioned about the will, a person can have many wills, one will for one jurisdiction, one will for one country. If you have significant asset in China, in India, you may have to have a will in India, have a will in China, as well as a will in Singapore. So they can not just one single domain. That's why the structuring is very important. Structuring is dependent on where your assets are, where your beneficiaries are, and then what is your concept of thinking.
Understood. So there are two questions probably I'll club. So one, firstly, is it can we make a will ourselves, or should we typically engage a lawyer to do it for us? And second, is there a recommended size of estate for starting a trust?
Estate planning, like I mentioned, the LPA, CPF nomination, insurance nomination, and all these things is not lawyers' duty, nor can the lawyer do anything. Like in Singapore, the CPF, only the CPF member himself or herself who has got CPF account, he or she that can deal with the CPF board to make nomination, nothing to do with lawyer. Now, on the other hand, talk about will. Will, if you know what consider a valid will, you can do your own. In Singapore, the Wills Act, the law governing will, no mention about saying only lawyer can write will. No, you can write your own will. You can have a will company, not law firm, to write will. There are such companies. So not everything lawyer, but rather you need to have the people who are specialized in estate planning, who know all these different instruments in the country that you are with, or you are staying. You need to approach these estate planning specialists as to how to structure an estate plan and what are the documents required. Some you have to, the 4 documents I mentioned, some you have to do yourself, but I can advise you what to do, and you have to do yourself. Will, I can help you to do. Trust, I can help you to set up, things like that. But AMD, you have to do yourself. Advanced Medical Directive. No person can do an AMD for another person. Only the adult himself, herself can do the Advanced Medical Directive himself. Same as the LPA. Yeah. I hope I have answered you.
Yep.
Partly.
Yep. I guess given the paucity of time, we'll just take one final question. So there is a question with 3 parts to it. What's the setup and ongoing cost of a joint standby trust in Singapore? How to transfer and assign assets to the trust, and how much will a typical licensed trust charge? Is it a percentage of the assets or not?
Thanks for that question. Number one, the standby trust, the meaning of the standby trust is a legal trust, but is on standby. So there's only a setup fee. Now, the company I'm working with, or I'm licensed to work with by this company, the standby trust, the setup fee as for a single person is 5,500. For a couple set up a joint standby trust is 6,500. One-time fee is one-time fee, and is standby mode, no activation, no annual fee until the time, the situation that you state when to activate. For example, my own standby trust, I put out there, if I die, of course, activate my blueprint. But today I'm healthy, right? So actually I set up mine about 10 years ago. So for the last 10 years, I do pay an annual fee. There's no work done by the trustee, right? So that's standby. So now when activated, the fee that we are charging is depend on what is the size of the asset under management, liquid assets. If some of you know what is a private bankers trust they set up for you, typically is $10,000-$20,000, and then they set up, and then their annual fee also at least $10,000 to $20,000. And then of course, bigger size they charge you about 1% to 2%. I mean, you can ask any private banker, they set up trust. This is typical annual fee, 1% to 2%. But for us as an estate planning solution, we're charging 0.5%, not even 1%, 0.5%. But if your asset is up to 3 million, is 0.4, and up to 10 million is 0.2. 0.2% per annum if the trust is activated. So, and anything, if an asset is more than 10 million, the annual fee is on negotiable basis. I hope I've given you the answer.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Mr. Lim. I think we'll end the session now, given we exceeded time by 10 minutes. Thanks a lot for being a part of this and helping educate our audience on this. And to those whose questions remain unanswered, we shall get back to you with responses on those questions. You can feel free to reach out to Mr. Lim at the coordinates shown on the screen, or you feel free to reach out to us at support@crystal.ai as well. Thanks a lot for attending. We shall share a recording with you in a few days' time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Lim.
Thank you. My pleasure. I will stop sharing here.
Thank you.